So we've come to the point now where we've talked a lot about some of the foundations. We've talked about adult learning, needs assessments, writing objectives, etc. At this point, you know your topic. You've been maybe thinking about content, hopefully by now. Now we come to the point where it's important to outline what it is you want your people to do. Think about when I say what you want your people or your trainees to be able to do, think about that in terms of the skills you want them to be able to perform as a task, right? Think about that as a task, right? And so whatever your skill is, that's what you're going to be writing in your skill outline, right? Or also known as a task analysis. Okay. So if the skill is how to give feedback, then the task you want your trainees to be able to perform is how to be able to give feedback. Okay. So task outline, skill outline, very similar kinds of terms. And so what we're going to try to really what the task or skill outline attempts to do is answer this question. What are the major and minor steps or actions that someone needs to be able to do in order to perform the skill? So if I'm going to train you on how to give feedback or how to deliver an effective sales presentations, then I need to know what the steps are. What are the major and minor steps to be able to do that? And so think about it as a blueprint, right? You're giving your trainees a blueprint on how they would actually perform the task or demonstrate the skill in action. Okay. So think about it as also as a roadmap, right? You're showing them sort of turn by turn directions. And so the idea is, as a trainer, you're certainly going to train them on how to do that, but it's important for you to be able to know what those different skills and behaviors are going to be as well. And so the idea with the task outline or skill outline is it needs to list all the major and minor steps such that if you handed someone your skill outline, they would be able to get off to a pretty good start on knowing how to get to the destination, which is being able to perform the skill. So let me just go through a couple of really important things here for us to think about. And again, in your book, you might see it referred to as task analysis. A task analysis is typically a very long document. It lists steps and sub steps and sub steps, et cetera. And there's certainly some examples in your Dropbox where you'll see a lot of that detail. I'm simplifying it a little bit for the assignment and just calling it a skill outline. It doesn't have to be as detailed as a traditional task analysis, although that could be beneficial. We'll talk about that in a second as well. So if you go to page 74 in your book, you'll actually notice it'll talk about it'll give you an outline, a pretty detailed outline. But here's what I would encourage you to do. Really, it's three things when it comes to writing the task outline. One, you have to know what your skills and behaviors you're training on are, right? And so if your topic is how to give effective feedback, okay, well, then you're going to, if you imagine you're doing a search, you're probably going to search how to give effective feedback in Google search, right? And so you got to know what the skills and behaviors are in the first place. So what should they be able to do? What does giving good feedback look like? What does it look like? What's involved in it? I mean, at the end of the day, a skill, you should be able to observe that, right? So every question you should ask yourself, what does that look like? What does that look like? How would they do that? When it comes to writing a skill outline or a task analysis, the word how is your best friend. How to give effective feedback. Okay, how do you do that first, right? And how do you do that? How do you do that? So just keep doing that. And what you would do is you're going to do some searching, right? You're going to research. Popular press outlets are going to be your friend for this. Doesn't mean you can't get into some of the research on it as well, certainly. But using things like Forbes, Fast Company, those are just Harvard Business Review, really good practical. Inc. is also another one. It's geared mainly toward entrepreneurs, but it's a great source for a lot of good information. One of the most powerful things about popular press articles, in addition to the fact that they're short, they're typically written almost like outlines, right? It'll say 3 steps for giving effective feedback, boom, 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 right? And those could actually be part of your outline. And it's okay to take content online. We're going to cite our sources. We're going to go through that, right? But it's okay to use that research that's out there, right? And a lot of times they'll have links that are embedded within there. So I'd encourage you to go through that as well whenever you're filling out what the different skills. Second, imagine that you have a list of 10 steps to give effective feedback. Then what I want you to think about, or maybe 10 dimensions of good feedback, is how do you sequence those? Like, in other words, what should they do first? What should they do second? What should they do third? And we'll look at an example of that as well. Listen, this is really important. Every step, every sub-step in your outline has to start with a verb, has to start with a good action verb, right? So it's not, it needs to be behavioral, right? It needs to be something that you can witness, you could observe, just like your objectives were as well. And then again, think about the order that you put them in as well. And then you're going to add detail to those steps as well. So let's look at an example here. So if my outline was, or if my task or my skill is to think about your skill as your topic, right? If your skill is to give effective feedback, right? How to give effective feedback, then here are my 3 steps. First, identify your mindset. 2, establish trust. 3, deliver the actual feedback. So that the steps are important, because how many of us know if you just go right to giving feedback, but you don't have any trust, or you're not in the right frame of mind, you have the wrong assumptions, that may not be valuable. So the order matters quite a bit. So here's some examples. Identify your mindset, establish trust, and you can see, how do you then I would say, how do you do that? Identify your assumptions and goals. You might want to go a step further. How would you do that? So you can kind of get the idea, right? That it's going to get really specific as I go through here. And the question I get very often is, how long should the task outline be? And of course, you hate this answer, but it all depends. I've seen excellent skill outlines that are 2 pages single spaced, and I've seen excellent outlines that are 5 to 7. So it just kind of depends. What I would tell you is, if there's a place in this project early-ish on to go deep and maybe risk going a little bit too far, it's the task outline. Because what you'll find is, this is not going to be the most exciting part of the project. It won't be your favorite probably, but it could be one of the most beneficial if it's done really well. Because trust me, if you try to develop anything in your training without knowing what you're training on, without knowing the steps, it's not going to go well. So that's a really important piece when you think about that. So 2 words of encouragement, or caution and encouragement. First off, if you're struggling with your task outline, it may be because of a couple things. Your topic may be too broad. Your topic may be way too broad, or you just haven't done a lot of research to determine what those steps are. So either one of those things can trip you up if you're not careful. The other thing I would say is, you also, if your task outline is really short, just go back and make sure that you have enough detail in there as well. And again, how much is enough? It really depends. Again, if there's a place to go deep early on in this assignment, it would be this one. So those are my words of encouragement for you. And I wish you the best when you work on your task outline, and just excited to see what you guys come up with for these.